day he randomly had this black and blue mark under his left eye. And I brought it up to his doctor and they weren't too concerned. And then over the course of 2 weeks, it spread into his whole under eye. I took him to the emergency room and I got accused of child abuse. But they held my son down for 20 minutes to do a full body x-ray to make sure I didn't break his eye socket and anything else in his body. They were looking for any sort of trauma, previous or new. They make us horrified to bring our kids in over this kind of stuff because we get framed out to be like monsters.
Welcome back to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all for sticking with me through all of these episodes. Like I've said before in most of my episodes, I always say that social media is a very love-hate relationship between myself and my family and my organization because it does take away a lot of what we can share with our child's journey and with what we go through with pediatric cancer, which, unlike what you'll see on commercials, is not fun, it's not exciting, and it's not pretty. Today, my guest is Madeline. She's going to be talking about her son Malachi and his pediatric cancer journey, or as my wife will call it, a shit show, and allow her to really kind of explain the insights of what it's been like with him and how he's doing today. So Madeline, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Madeline. I'm 25 and I have 3 children under the age of 5, kind of chaotic at times already. And then in June of not this year now, 2025, my son got diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma. It was super odd. I don't even really know how to explain it because he went from being literally perfectly fine, and he was our chubby boy. He was in the 99th percentile of weight, ate everything in sight. And then one day he randomly had this black and blue mark under his left eye. And I brought it up to his doctor and they weren't too concerned. They thought maybe he just like bumped it when he was playing or something because his brothers play so rough with him. And then over the course of 2 weeks, it spread into his whole under eye. I took him to the emergency room because by that morning after, it was a full black eye circled all the way around him, and I got accused of child abuse. I don't speak too much of it because I made one post about it a long time ago and I was told I was wrong for being angry at the hospital for accusing me of abuse. But they held my son down for 20 minutes to do a full body x-ray to make sure I didn't break his eye socket. That's what they were looking for. And anything else in his body. They were looking for any sort of trauma, previous or new. I asked him to stop multiple times because he has asthma and he was literally out of breath, screaming, holding him down on the board. And then we went back to the room and we sat for probably an hour. I was like, if you're not going to test for anything else, why can't we go home? And they're like, well, you need to get cleared by the child abuse specialist before you can leave. And at that point, I was like, okay, everything makes sense because the doctors were all looking at me weird. The nurses were all looking at me weird. And I just felt like I was being looked at as a monster when I just brought my child in for, concern. So his x-rays came back clear and we got sent home. And I was just told to follow up with the pediatrician on Friday. That was a Wednesday. They told me not to send them back to daycare in case abuse happened at daycare. CPS showed up at my mom's house Thursday while I was at work because she took him. They questioned her about how good of a mother I was and if she had any concerns for abuse as well. And then Friday morning I woke up and it went from a full black eye to spreading over to his other eye. And that's when I was like, something is so wrong. So I took him to his pediatrician, and his pediatrician literally took one look at him and she was like, something is like really, really wrong. Something's not right. And we got sent for blood work. Stat labs were ordered. Got the blood work. I hung around for maybe 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm just going to go home. It's probably going to take a while. I made it 5 minutes down the street and I got the call that I had to turn right around and take my son back to the hospital. Because the blood work was super concerning. From that point forward, we spent 48 very long days in the hospital. But that's basically the background of how he came to be diagnosed with neuroblastoma.
That is absolutely an unbelievable story. And I will say that, and not to take anything away from what you said, because what you went through just to get answers for your son is unreal. And I don't even know how to explain what it makes me feel inside, because I can honestly tell you that when my wife was going through this with my daughter, getting her diagnosis, she literally felt as if they were putting her in rooms and watching her, thinking that she was doing something. And I hear this story over and over again. And I will say yours is probably the most intense, where they actually got people involved. And from what I've heard, but why is it that as parents, we're almost shamed and made to be afraid to actually make sure our kids are okay? Like that's unreal that it got to that point. And I
And before I
honestly,
knew what was wrong, I was like, should I have not brought him in? Like, if they're just gonna treat me like this, like, should I just have let it go? See if he was like, if it was really just a bruise from getting played with. And it's like like you said, they make us horrified to bring our kids in over this kind of stuff because we get framed out to be like monsters.
right. And you are literally just trying to do what's best for your child, and they're overlooking what is necessary to ensure that, because right now early detection of any type of cancer, whether it's adults or kids, early detection is the best treatment plan we have to get to where we are. And when you look at it like that, when a kid can't come in and tell you what's going on, and their parent is their best advocate, but now you're silencing their parents essentially and not allowing them to really show what's going on, you're putting the kids at risk for not having a solid treatment plan because you're pushing off diagnosis. And even
Exactly.
in cases like when this doesn't happen, what you also had mentioned too, that they will cast off like, okay, it's just kids, boys being boys, it's it's growing pains, it's whatever. And I get it. I do. You don't want to jump to the conclusion of cancer because you have a black eye. I get that. But at the same time, parents know what your children's baselines are, and they know what is boys being boys and what is something that just isn't right. And that's something that really needs to be fixed, I think, in the medical community, is that we've got to start listening to parents more and not treating them like monsters, like you said.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
And it's like, I understand they can't just ignore the possibility of abuse because there are people who abuse their children and bring them in the hospital to make sure they didn't do too much damage, in one way to put it. But at the same time, if I have a history of bringing my child into the hospital over every little thing, which I have for all three of my children, I wouldn't call myself a hypochondriac, but I don't miss a beat. Every time something's off, they're in the doctor's office. If the doctor's office can't get them in, they're in the hospital or urgent care. And he has already a track record of so many medical issues. He was diagnosed with asthma at 6 months old. He was hospitalized 4 separate times for just a common cold because he couldn't breathe. He's been put on oxygen 3 separate times. Each of his hospital stays were like a week long. And it's just like, it's not like he never had any health issues. And just looking back at all of that is just, it's the times like that where you wonder if you like miss something. Like, you think you're doing the best you can, and then you sit back after all is said and done and really wonder if there was something at some point that you missed. And I think that's the hardest part about after your child gets diagnosed, is you can't stop yourself from looking back through your phone and every picture you took, every memory, trying to figure out what was that pivoting point where I could have noticed something before, shit hit the fan. But I didn't. And it's just trying not to blame yourself, which I think is the hardest part, and I still struggle with it sometimes. I've gotten better with it, but it's hard not to try and blame yourself. Like, if I caught this a couple months earlier, would have not metastasized to his whole body, or like, was there lumps that I didn't see? And I think that makes it really difficult as well when your child just first gets diagnosed on top of everything else you just go through.
You will, unfortunately, the what if scenarios, and just from not a standpoint of scaring anybody, but the what if scenarios never go away. You will always consider the same thing, looking through your phone, looking back over pictures, wondering, okay, they're looking a little bit this way in that picture. Could I have caught it then? It's really an unfortunate side effect of this type of diagnosis, is that you're always trying to find a way to see if you could have caught it earlier. And the reality of it is, at some point, I think you maybe would come to the realization that no, you did everything you could. I think in your heart, you know that you did everything you could, but just your brain is always resorting back to, what could I have done sooner to fix this? And, because we don't know enough about pediatric cancer in a sense of what causes it, we're just in a loop, an endless loop of us trying to figure it out. And it's a detriment. It really is, because, we're blaming ourselves. I like I say, I always will feel, no matter what, we did everything we could for our daughter, but I will always feel like a failure as a father, even though in my heart, I know I didn't fail her. I know that I did everything I could. We did everything we could. But I feel like that because as a parent, your basic one job is to protect your kids from anything. And this is just that one thing that you cannot see and you can't stop. But I think the reality of it is for you to share these types of things with people to really kind of make them the whole point of this podcast really is not only to be able to share your story, but also for people to relate that are out there, because I don't know about you, and you can explain this, but when the diagnosis came for us, we were absolutely on an island. Knew nobody, knew nothing of this. We're really ignorant to the fact that there were entire wings of hospitals that were dedicated to pediatric cancer and that children were fighting until we were put in that moment. We became the families on those commercials that we always thought, wow, that's terrible. There's no way that's ever going to happen to me. And then you become that.
Or just telling people always ask me like, oh, I can't imagine what you're going through. And I always tell people, I said, just consider yourself blessed that you don't know your way around a children's hospital by memory. Because having to learn that hospital, you know where everything is. Now you're that person that's getting asked, oh, do you know where this is? Or do you know where I can find this? And it was so hard because when he first got diagnosed, we were in full swing. Like we were there for 48 days consecutively. It was PICU, Onco, PICU, Onco. Every time we thought he was making progress, he'd get dropped down to Onco, and 6 hours later, we were taken right back up to the PICU because of breathing issues. And it's just like when we finally made it down to the Onco floor consistently, I think it was the last 12 days. It's just like seeing all the kids, it's heartbreaking. And it's like all we ever see is St. Jude commercials. I'm not here to knock St. Jude and say anything like that. But sometimes I'm like, they make it look like such a sad but like staged commercial. Like they're like everything's all cookie cutter. Like why don't we put commercials out that show like how it really is? It's not all sunshine and butterflies and donate to St. Jude. You're going to save all these kids' lives, because it's not the truth. And until you're put on the onco floor and you're faced with 20 different kids fighting 20 different types of cancer, and there's kids throwing up in the hallway because they're trying to walk through chemo. There's babies, there's teenagers, there's everything. You won't understand like how nasty childhood cancer is, and hearing code blue and hearing everything else. And it's there's parents crying in every corner. There's the family room. There's parents crying. There's parents talking about like, what did we do wrong? And it's like, no one will ever fully understand how childhood cancer is until you're forced into that situation. Because no one asked to be put here in this situation, and there's nothing that prepares you for it. I also tell people there's no book on parenting, let alone a book on how to be a parent to a child with cancer. It's all like learning, and it's new every day. I learn something new every day.
No, I listen. I've said in the past that there's a million books on how to be a parent, and I think a million of those were written by people that didn't have kids, and that's the reality of it. And I think when it comes to pediatric cancer, there isn't. I mean, I did meet an author that wrote a handbook after her daughter had gone through pediatric cancer that would have been really nice to have when we were going through all of this. It gives you a lot of good information, but overall, no, there's no guidebook on any of this. You're in a room, and when the diagnosis first comes, before you know exactly what's going on, generally speaking, about 12 different people are going to come into the room. You've got an oncologist, a social worker, your normal doctor, the nurses on staff, people
Child
coming
life.
in for child life, which the greatest people on the planet, by the way. They're all going to come into your room, and you're going to feel absolutely overwhelmed, and you're not going to know what's going on or what hit you. Now, when you first see oncology come through the room, you know what's going on, and you know you're about to get that diagnosis, those words that no parent wants to hear. And then you're on that floor. You're in essentially a fishbowl of all of these people, and you're knowing that they're hearing the same words you're hearing. But at the same time, I almost feel like we were being looked at. Like, what did you guys do wrong? I can't believe you're here. Your kid's going through this, and what are you supposed to do? We had other kids at home, and you're missing out on the things that are happening with them. How do you explain it to them that their baby sister, their brother, how do they explain that that they have cancer, and that all of this the world is about to change with all of this, and you have no idea. You have no idea what to do. Now, I will say that today maybe the resources are a little better, and I think it's because as a community we've come together to offer those resources to each other, to parents, to be there for you, to say, here's my phone number, call me if you need to call me, and just yell and just scream, because sometimes that's what we need, right? And sometimes we just need to vent. But in that situation, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, there was nothing. You were literally in there wondering what in the hell. And And I have repeatedly reached out to St. Jude to actually have them come on the podcast, because not as a gotcha, but I want them honestly to tell me, and I literally put this out. I actually did it not too long ago. I put in a press release. I said, this is what I want to ask. I want to know why your marketing is so centered around the good. Because I'll be honest with you, I've got 12 animals in my house right now. And a lot of that is probably subliminally because of ASPCA commercials that make those animals look so sad, so horrible. They make you want to help. St. Jude commercials, and again, like you said, no knock against what they're doing, but it really shows the good side of things. And unless you've been on a hot unit for us, it was 40 days and then another 12 following a seizure. When you've been stuck in a hot unit and then C. diff, when your child gets C. diff and they get, you're quarantined for like 2 weeks in a room and you can't leave and you're staring at four walls, and, YouTube only has so much to offer and all of this. And then you really start to understand that's the real side of pediatric cancer. Your kid getting mucositis, and your kids getting feeding tubes put in, which is the absolute worst thing to watch. Oh, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Just swallow water while you're doing it. And they're getting held down for procedures, and you can't do anything about it. And they have massive scars from whatever surgeries they've had to go through in order to remove the cancer or to give them a better chance, or these highly, highly intense chemotherapies or stem cell transplants, all of this. Like, yeah, it's not fun to look at. It's right. It's not glamorous. It's, your kids make the best of these situations, and how they can continue to smile and bring that into a room is unbelievable with what they're going through. Yeah, they smile, but what happens when they're not smiling is, I really think that needs to be the commercial. And yeah, it sucks. And a lot of people would probably change the channel because it's not fun to look at, or they would think this needs to be censored. This needs to be covered up, but we can't censor it, right? We can't cover it up. So why wouldn't you want to show the real side of things? And, I get it. The happy stuff brings more support, but it's not the reality.
That's also why I feel the need to share my son's story so much, because I'm like, people have no clue. They have absolutely no clue how bad it is. Like you said, St. Jude, it's just like, oh, happy, happy, happy. Look at all these things you're doing. And then you get to that point where you're like, oh, all my family's telling me, oh, why don't you go to St. Jude? Why don't you go to St. Jude? It's free. Like, they provide everything. I'm like, do you know your child has to completely fit into the criteria of one of their clinical trials? They don't take any child. And people don't know that because they say no child is turned away. No child is turned away by age, sex, race. They are definitely turned away by their cancer diagnosis. My son does not fit a single clinical trial there. And they don't tell you either that you have to start treatment at St. Jude. If your child is touched, has any chemo, anything, and they're in their first treatment phase, like frontline treatment, no, you can't go to St. Jude. And I get so tired of people telling me. Our family called me the whole first month. They're like, oh, just go to St. Jude. Don't worry about anything. I'm like, so you want me to travel 6 states away from my other 2 children because they're in school and just act like it's completely fine to, one, be that far away from them. I still need to see my kids. And just to hope my miracle is sitting in St. Jude. I don't know where my miracle is sitting. I don't know if there will be a miracle. And a lot of people don't like saying that. I don't know. My son was given a survival rate of 50% when he was first diagnosed because he has 18 tumors. Collectively, it was metastasized head to toe. And right now, knock on wood, he is doing amazing. But every time I get a good scan result, my oncologist is the first one to tell me, just remember, he is the highest chance of relapse because of the amplification. It's like, here's good news, here's a punch to the gut. And that's what I get every single time.
I don't ever want to disparage what research and what good things can come out of a hospital like St. Jude or clinical trials. But at the same time, that's the biggest misunderstanding. Number one, it's not a hospital that you can just walk into. Number two, you have to be accepted into a clinical trial that they are currently running at that moment for your child's diagnosis. And I believe there's only, I want to say 76 or 70, there's less than 100 beds. It's not a hospital that you can just pack full of hundreds and hundreds of people. And listen, I get it, okay? But at the same time, people have to understand what clinical trials are. Now, clinical trials, generally speaking, you can't be too sick and you can't be too well. There's a real fine line where you would be accepted into a clinical trial at all. And then in order to start a clinical trial, you generally have to be off whatever treatment you're on for a certain amount of time. So you're taking a risk getting involved in any clinical trial, no matter what. Now add travel into that. Now add being away from your family and taking your child away from your family, which, listen, as a parent, we'll do anything possible to save our children's lives, 100%. But you also have to realize that you have other responsibilities, you have other children, you have a job, you have a home, you've got animals, whatever. You have to factor all this in. Like, if we could just pick up, put everything on pause, go fix our kids and come back, that would be phenomenal. But it's not real. That's not real. And a lot of us are faced with the inability to just pick up and leave. You know, for us, even we were 2 hours away from our children's hospital. That was a big deal to be an initial diagnosis to be for 12 days. My wife they said, you're going to the hospital right now. On our oldest daughter's birthday at 5:00 at night, the pediatrician called and said, you're going to the hospital now. Okay, pack your stuff and go. Then we're there for 12 days. And we had no idea when we were coming home. There's no set end to it. When I was with my daughter in Milwaukee for her stem cell transplant, no idea. I said, how long are we going to be here? They said, we don't know. And 40 days later, and it's like, you have no idea. There's no time frame on this. Even for general chemo, when you just have to go and they say, okay, you'll be here for a couple days. You could be there for 5. You could be there for 10. You have no idea. There's so much factored in to all of this that I really don't understand why people can't kind of wrap their heads around that. And I think the worst thing, and I have been attacked upside down and all the way around and twice on Sundays for this. I think the worst thing you can ask a parent or tell a parent that is going through this is go to St. Jude. Have you been to St. Jude? Hell yes, we have. Hell yes, we have tried. Of course we have. Because you asking us that question or just saying, number one, if you say just go there, then you don't understand how it works. And if you're asking us if we have, then you're assuming that we just haven't done everything in our power to fix our kids. And that, to me, is a slap in the face. So if you're listening to this and you know somebody that's going through this, or just don't ask that question. Just assume we have already done that, or we have reached out to other hospitals or we're doing our research. Like, we, as parents, we need more, I'm sorry, but we need more credit for what we know about stuff we wish we didn't, which is a lot.
I think other than the not telling, don't tell a parent to go to St. Jude when they're fresh in a diagnosis, this might also be controversial, but don't ask a parent if they believe in God. Don't tell a parent to pray more. I personally, myself, I believe in God. And when my son got diagnosed, I stopped. I stopped praying. I stopped everything because I couldn't accept that this could happen to my son. I think the worst thing was the 100 messages you get from strangers like, oh, I'm praying for you. Oh, you need to pray to God. Like, oh, God will make everything better. Put it in God's hands. And I'm like, my son just got diagnosed with cancer. And you're just telling me to let go and give it to God. How? As a parent, there's so much I have to do. There's so much I have to look into. I will never stop researching possibilities, hospitals, treatments, anything. But don't tell me just be fine. You're fine. Just give it to God. You're good. I can't do that. As a parent, I'm going to be my child's biggest advocate. I'm going to be the one most worried about him at all times. I can't just let it go. And I think that was the biggest thing. I was told that by so many people. And I don't mind. Go ahead. You can say you're praying for my family, any of that. I don't mind. I love that. But don't tell me that what I need to do with my religion personally, because my journey with God was started only maybe a year before my son got diagnosed. So to not have the closest, best relationship, and then to have your son diagnosed with cancer and then just be like, what'd I do wrong? Like, is this because I didn't do this earlier? And then everyone's just telling you that, well, you just need to pray and forget about it. You're fine. Your son's going to be fine. Like, that, you can't tell it to somebody.
I agree with you. 100%. And I think the very, very soon before our daughter passed, I asked both of my girls all of my kids were in Catholic school from preschool all the way up. And I asked them, I said, if she passes away, will you still believe in God? And I asked them a question because I truly didn't know, because I've never been super religious. Honestly, I'll call myself a holiday churchgoer. So we'd go on Christmas or, that kind of stuff, right? But never like, I'm not reading my Bible. I'm not praying. And that's not to say that I don't believe in God or any of that, and to each their own, but I was never at that point. I was always of the belief, if I believe, I don't need to be there in order to prove that I believe, And when all of this started happening at. I think that it's very easy to say nuts to this. How in the world can the all higher being allow this to happen to a child? And I think that's realistic thoughts. And I think those thoughts happen to a lot of people. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think you have to question things. I think you have to be understanding also that people are going to question their faith. And, and I agree with you, put it in the hands of God. It's kind of like we already did when we had the child, we put it in the hands of God, and now look what happened.
Look where we're at now.
Yeah, like people, I think people have knee-jerk reactions to say what they think they need to say at that moment, or what kind of recycled things of what they need to tell you or what they feel like is the best point, but don't really think about how it's going to make us feel as a person. And to that, I will say the only reprieve I'm going to give you is that you don't understand our situation. So because of that, you can't understand how we feel when you say something like that. But yeah, I think, the faith comes into question. A lot of things come into question. You're questioning yourself. You're questioning your parenting. You're questioning where you live. Did you live too close to power lines? You know what I mean? Did you drink the wrong kind of water? Is it food dyes? Whatever. Listen, they're the questions that come in. And I will also say that if you really want a good diagnosis, you head on over to TikTok, because the doctors on TikTok are just phenomenal. You know what I mean? They're all self-taught and they know everything, and they will tell you. I had a person tell my now 17-year-old daughter that the reason that her sister got cancer was because she put blue food dye in mac and cheese because my daughter wanted mac and cheese one day. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. People are amazing. But, all in all, if you want to truly understand, like I think from a parent standpoint, I can say we don't want you to understand how we feel, but we want you to know that this is real, and this is a real problem that is getting worse. It's not getting better. And, when you see commercials, when you see, things that like what, if our government says it's rare, if there's only a certain amount of percentage that comes to our community, it doesn't look like a big problem. It really doesn't look like it's that big of an issue. But we're sitting here telling you that it's a problem. And
it's a big problem.
And even if you look at it and say, okay, well, 1 out of 5 children are not going to live. 1 out of 5 children. And a lot of people will look at that and say, that's pretty damn good odds. I would stand up and say, but my daughter was the one. And so I'm telling you that it's terrible odds. It should be 0. It should be no kids. It shouldn't, if there's going to be a diagnosis, I don't know that we can ever shut down the diagnosis of cancer until we kind of figure out the root of what's happening and how we can solve it. And maybe we never will. But even if those diagnoses continue to come, we should have a better way to treat it, and especially for our kids. If you can explain, I can tell you all day what I saw and how my daughter reacted to the chemotherapy and how all of these things that were the scariest things in the world. But until you watch firsthand how they react to the chemos, what it does to their body, and the ever famous nurses telling you, don't get it on you when it, you know what I mean? But then you have to question, what the hell is it doing to the inside of their body?
And it's just, to comment on your last comment, my favorite thing is telling nurses, I'm like, you tell me chemo is the miracle drug. It's the miracle worker. That's what my first nurse who administered chemo ever told me. She was like, it's the $10,000 syringe. That's a miracle. And they peel off this fancy little gold wrapper off the tip. I'm like, I used to joke around and say, is that what makes it $10,000 for this 15 ml vial of chemo? And they're coming in masks, gloves, gowns. They can't get it on them, but it's going straight into my son. I'll never forget the one time they put the bag up and it wasn't coming out through the bag. They're like, we need to act fast because the pressure is building in the bag. If this explodes, we're all screwed. I was like, that can explode. She's like, yeah, if this does not start draining, this bag is going to explode. And that's really bad. They had an issue with like the tubing or whatever. The pressure was going up instead of pushing it down the tube. And they quickly grabbed the bag, rushed it out of the room, brought in a new one. And it's just like, but that's going in my child. And I'm supposed to be fine with that. You're telling me this will burn me if it touches me, but you're pumping it into my child.
That's the chemo protocol is something, honestly, it's like out of a movie, like 48 Days Later or something. It really is. They come in, generally speaking.
Teams of 2.
Right. There's always teams of 2 because you got to count off. You got to make sure you got it right. Then you got to check all the information about the patient. Then they're like double gowned and they've got the shields on, the gloves on, and all this stuff. You're sitting there like, I'm just over here, I guess, exposed to all this, like no big deal. And then it's going into your 20, 30 pound child. at that moment, and they're receiving this chemo. And then, like for us, when they did high dose chemo, there was thiotepa, which thiotepa is the only drug apparently that excretes through your pores. So then they get it done, and then they have to have 5 baths a day because otherwise the stuff sits on your skin and burns you. Like, what the hell does it do the inside of you that it
It's
burns you
really out
once it
of a
leaves
science
you?
horror movie.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And in your mind you're thinking, is this the best that we can offer to these kids? Is this the best we can offer them? Because the problem being is that too many people believe that cancer as a whole is the same. Adults and kids, it's the same cancer. The chemotherapy, it's the same chemo. It is the same chemo. And, in the beginning, I think that we kind of thought that maybe they watered it down. They don't water down the chemo. They just drag it out over long periods of time. They're getting the same damn drugs. And when you have to watch your kid get this administered over a 12-hour period, and they're going through all these side effects, and things are changing within their body, and the way that they feel, and they become frail, and it's like all of this is the reality that I want people to see. And I don't want you to see it because I want to scare you. I want you to see it because I want you to know that this is not okay. This is not right. And we as parents are not built to handle this. We're not built to handle this. And we're not built to bury our kids either. It's just not what we're here for. We're not supposed to do that. And too many of us are in a position like that. Too many of us in this community are in a position to watch our kids go through this and unfortunately watch them pass, or watch them go on in life and have these freaking side effects that are almost worse than what you were dealing with before diagnosis. And that's the other part of this is that, okay, you see a bald kid, they must have had cancer, and that's all. I mean, there's lots of conditions that can cause that, but you see the bald head, right? That's the number one indicator. But let's talk about, the fertility that is basically gone for the rest of their life. They lose their hearing, they lose their ability to walk. Some of them lose limbs because of this. Lung capacity, and when this stuff wraps around their lungs, especially with like neuroblastoma, right, or wraps around organs and things like that. And you've got, the mental decline because of, for brain cancer and other types of things, or the chemo itself is destroying those types of things. All these side effects for all this, I think in the long run sometimes are worse, and it makes you question. It makes you have that question in your mind, should I have done anything? Even though you should. But should I have? Because look at the quality of life just trying to save their life. It's I don't know. The questions are never going to end in my mind. I think it just goes on and on and on. But these are the types of things that I really think people need to understand, because it's not a rare situation. This is a problem. And even if it was rare, it's a terrible, damn rare problem to have that we should probably take care of.
And it's like, I have to first off by saying, like, it's parents like you that I think keep the parents who are battling currently their child keep going, because to turn your situation into something so beautiful, to give parents an outlet to just vent and get off their chest and talk about everything, and to show them, like, it's not easy, but I kept going and I did it for my daughter, or I did it for my son. Like, it takes a very strong person to do that. And you, and especially, I have a friend named Lily. She just lost her son a couple months ago, to the same cancer my son had. And regardless of that, she still is checking in on me. She's still making sure my son Malachi's okay. She's, if I have a question, she's like, don't ever feel bad about asking a question. I don't care what I just went through. Reach out to me. It feels good to help and to make sure parents are doing what they can. And it's like parents like you guys that really keep this going, and I think we'll keep advancing because you guys have been through the ins and outs already. And we're just getting started. We're halfway through frontline treatment, barely. And it's like you guys have already been through all this, and you, like, anything you questioned, you could be like, well, I did this, but sometimes I wonder what would happen if I went this way. Like, me personally, it's debatable for a lot of people, but we pulled my son from stem cell transplant. We were scared. I wasn't comfortable with a side effect of stem cell, rare side effect, but it could be death. And that scared the absolute shit out of me. And I was saying, my child could die from this treatment, but if he survived, they still can't promise he won't relapse, because there is no promise. And I was like, well, then I'm going to go the safer route. And I talked to a lot of parents. There's parents who said they went through it and their child almost died and they're horrified, and if they had to do it again, they would never do it. There's parents who say it was the miracle they needed and that got them through. Just to be able to have real life experiences come into your ear really help you get through your journey, because the doctor, they're going to tell you what they have to tell you by state board protocol, or the country protocol. Like my doctor told me, she's like, I can't tell you not to do stem cell transplant because that's our standard protocol. She was like, you can talk to whoever you want, but I can't tell you not to do it. And I remember the day I walked in telling her, I was like, we're not doing stem cell. I was like, we're not. And she's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. She's like, can I ask who you talk to? I was like, no. I was like, you can only tell me your standard answer. I'm giving you my answer. I'm not doing it. And she's like, well, I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong. I'm just going to tell you I would have gone with stem cell. And I was like, that's fine. We're not doing it. And, she told me I had to, I have to live with that regret if something were to go wrong, like if he were to relapse. And I was like, but you couldn't promise me he won't relapse if I do it anyway. What's the difference? There is no, and this where it goes back to funding, because there is no funding to make a trial head to head where stem cell versus immunotherapy, which one is the better outcome. There is no head to head trial yet to compare people who do stem cell versus skip it completely. And they're like, well, maybe you should go tell the hospital board that they should fund that trial. And I was like, yeah, but we don't have the funds. And that's the thing. Like, we would have solid answers. We don't have the money to get those solid answers. And that's what sucks. And that's why I feel like we need to keep sharing the nastiness, because no one's going to care. They're never going to care until they see literally kids dying from treatment they're going through, dying from cancer. They're not going to care.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I will never, I mean, I will say this. I will say this. My wife and I, now that we have obviously been through all of this, we've seen the ups, the downs, and, the unfortunate passing of our daughter. Like, I think in a way we do kind of watch people go, and I'm not saying this about you. In a way we do watch what people do or how kids are looking, and we can kind of see it and like say, okay, this is where they are and this is where we were. This is probably what's going to happen. And it's not judging the parents for doing something. It's like now we have this vision of, we see what happens, or if a kid is looking a certain way or feeling a certain way or responding, we're like, okay, we know what that means. But we'll kind of find ourselves going, well, maybe we would have done this, or we would have done that, or they should probably do this, but never actually say that out loud, because as a parent, your individual situations are different, and these kids are absolutely all different. Even, 4 kids across the board, same age, same height, same weight, all neuroblastoma, all same line in their treatment. They're all going to react differently to the protocols. And I will guarantee you they're probably going through a different protocol than what you're going through, because where you are in the country also makes a big difference. How much the doctors are willing to reach out and really research what those protocols are or get that information, I think is another problem that we have major within this community is territorial kind of medicine, where they don't want to reach out. If something goes good, they want to keep it to themselves, or if something goes bad, they don't want to say anything about it. It's like we really need to have a better understanding across the board. And the reality of it is that's only going to come with time and with us as parents not being quiet and us saying and standing up for our kids. And I think what you did, standing up and saying stem cells is not the way we want to go, I think is the right thing, because number one, you would have looked into it and decided the side effects are too much of a risk for what could happen. And they can't guarantee that what they're saying is going to happen is not going to be stopped by this. And I will also say this. You trusted the one thing that I think on this planet cannot be matched, and that's a mama gut. And that's something that was brought up and said to me by somebody, really, really amazing. And every single mom that I have talked to, it's the same thing. You have a feeling that you cannot match with medicine or science, none of it. You know that something's not right. You know that something's not, that you just don't feel like it's the right thing to do. And listen, you're not wrong or, for doing that. You did what you felt was right. And, stem cell, I honestly don't understand stem cell transplants, because stem cell transplants are basically supposed to take all the bad out of your body and put good back in and start you over. And I remember questioning it, and I've never gotten a solid answer. Why would you not skip chemo altogether and just do stem cells on? Why wouldn't you just take the bad out, put the good in,
No,
and
they went
call it a
6
day?
rounds of low dose and 2 insanely high dose chemos. And it's when they explained to me, they're like, well, the high dose chemo can essentially kill you in itself, and the stem cell is just to rescue your body from flatlining. And I was like, what? I was like, and you just put my kid through 6 rounds of chemo, and now you want to tell me that you're going to give him chemo that could essentially kill him, but his stem cells are going to rescue him before he hits rock bottom. At least that's the plan. And that concept, when she explained it to me like that, scared the actual shit out of me. And I was like, no, I can't do this. You're telling me you're giving him such a powerful drug that in itself will kill him if he doesn't have stem cells. That's not safe. That doesn't make sense. It's just like, it's the fact that if the stem cell rescue wasn't there, that chemo alone could kill your child. That makes no sense to me. But we're putting it in their body. It scares me. And there needs to be new medicines. There needs to be, I'm not saying homeopathic. I will not say I believe in it. I won't say I don't believe in it, but I'm not shifted towards that side. But there needs to be a safer medicine and treatment out there that is not killing our child in hopes to make them better. That's just how I feel when it comes to all that.
You're not wrong with all of that. There needs, the reality of it is there's 100% chance that we know what's going to happen if we do absolutely nothing, right? But there's lower chance if we try this that it could make it better, or at least give them a longevity in life and get you to that magical 5 years, of which then you're considered cancer free. Of which case, after the 5 years, I don't really know what happens, because it seems like we just forget about it.
It's 5 years. That's all that matters.
That's exactly what it is. You get to 5 years, you're considered cancer-free. Good luck in life. Here's your 3-inch binder of all the crap you're probably going to deal with for the rest of your life, along with all of the different cancers you can get from the chemos that we gave you to protect you. So it's really a cycle that I don't truly understand. And when you look at it and say, yeah, we need better, and I say, okay, I agree with you that we need better treatments, we need better understandings, better options, because if the options are putting you in a worse position, but you're alive, is that really the best that we can do, the best that we can offer? And yeah, like regular chemo, and this is another situation. I am not a medical person. I've never been a medical person. And so I didn't even know that a blood-brain barrier was a thing. I didn't even know it was a thing. Never explained to me ever. Our daughter went through all of these rounds of chemo and for brain cancer, but all the chemo was working from the neck down. And so when we got to the point where she relapsed and they said, okay, now we're going to go do stem cells, but we first have to start with high dose. And I said, what is the difference with high dose? They said, well, that breaks the blood-brain barrier. I said, what the hell were we doing before? We weren't treating anything to where the actual cancer was, which made no sense to me. But at that point, I was like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. And then you get 15 rounds of high-dose chemo over like 2 days. And it is intense. And they blast your body literally down to zero. Everything. You are zeros across the board. You can't have a sneeze in that room without them getting sick. And you are quarantined again because of all of the stuff that's going on. But that's the best option that you're giving a parent at that moment is, hey, we're doing this. This is the best option that we have. Okay, great. Well, I will tell you right now that as good as a stem cell transplant sounds like, because it's replacing your body with all the bad stuff, it's putting the good stuff in. Our daughter got worse after the stem cells. Unfortunately, it happened, and within 5 months, we lost her. And it was, to me, what it did was it opened the floodgates and allowed her cancer cells to spread throughout her body, which had never happened before. She never had cancer cells anywhere in her spinal fluid and anywhere. And then all of a sudden, it spread throughout her body. It put her in almost a 10-day coma because of everything that was going on. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. And through all of that, I've seen a lot. And believe me, to anybody listening, if you ever want to be scared out of your mind, far beyond any kind of R-rated horror film you see, allow me to go through the photos on my phone, and I will break you 100%. The strongest person in this world, I will have you on your knees crying. It is the worst. This is what parents are going through. This is what we're facing. Like, if you've never kneeled on the floor and fallen asleep across the bed to make sure your child doesn't have a freaking seizure and fall out of the bed in the middle of the night, you don't know what you're missing. It's a truly incredible experience. If you've never seen them get up and stand up out of bed after a chemotherapy and their legs give out just because what they're going through. If you've never seen them piss bright blue because of methylene blue, you don't know what you're missing. Like, these are the real sides of things. And I do this, like you said, to give parents a voice, because I feel like we're in the background in the shadows all the time. I do this because our daughter's legacy deserves to be secured. And every single parent that I meet, your child deserves to have their voice loud and across the board. I stand here for my kids. I stand here for my daughter. I stand here for your kids. I stand here for all of these kids because they deserve to have their voices heard. And as a parent, this is my ultimate therapy. This is my ultimate way to give back and ensure that this doesn't happen anymore. But I want to hear everybody else's story. But I hate that it sounds so much like mine, because that means that we are on the same path. And if there's that many people out there that can mirror what I've seen and what my wife and I and my other two kids have been through, that's an issue. And that's
There's
far
not enough
beyond
development.
rare. No.
Everything's the same. And I'll make the one last comment about stem cell. I'm not going to name drop my oncologist because I had to literally harass the question out of her. I told her, I was like, I need you to be really real with me before I make this decision. I was like, what is the reality of this? And she told me, she was like, if we do stem cell and he relapses in the first 3 months, I can't promise you he'll make it, because they say the same thing. She said the stem cell transplant bottoms you out so bad that if he were to relapse in those first 3 months, his body won't even be recovered enough to fight off a relapse. And I think that was my turning point. And I just want to say that because I think more parents need to be aware of that, because an oncologist is going to tell you, well, if he does relapse, because they don't want to tell you he's going to relapse with stem cell. They want you to do it. But they won't tell you that if your child relapses shortly after stem cell, the chance of them beating that relapse is damn near impossible, because their body isn't strong. And I just don't think people are transparent enough about stem cell transplant at all. They don't talk about that enough.